I would like to thank Blavatsky and the Master to be here tonight and speak about the subject which is so close to me, which is the Rosicrucians. I have been reading about this topic many years, but I confess that I have not exhausted all the aspects of the subject, because there is many gaps to be closed, and I believe this gap will never be totally closed, because the real answers are in the mystery, belong to the mysteries. We're never gonna find a final version about the topic of the Rosicrucians, but there's a lot of secrecy involved. And the material published is very... Now we have a very good translation of the first manifestos, but there's still questions to be answered. And saying this, I would like to start right to the point. I would like to apologize because I made so many slides and was excessive in number, but I have to jump some of them. And also, when the time comes, I will amplify the screen, and I'm not gonna jump any other slides. I'm a little concerned about the time, and that I'll try to finish this in 1 hour, okay? So let's start. Um, 400 years ago, the publication of 3 documents launched the Rosicrucian movement. They were called Fama Fraternitatis in 1614, the Confessio Fraternitatis in 1615, and the Chemical Wedding of Christian Rosicrucians in 1616. Much has been written and argued about the Rosicrucian movement being a myth, a hoax, or a spiritual phenomenon. It depends who was saying or who were talking about it. But before I go right to the subjects of this, to the contents of the manifestos, that's how they call it, I would like to situate them in the time and space, in the context of the time. The context of the Rosicrucian manifestos was this. They were written a century after the Reformation. Second, there were a conflict between the Protestant and Catholic that resulted in the 30 Years' War. It was a time where a philosophy, a way of thinking called millennialism, who has the forerunner like Gioacchino of De Fiore, was one of the main representatives of this movement. He was a prophetic visionary, and I don't know if you ever heard, but they say at the end of every millennium there are a feeling of expectation that sometimes people think the world is going to end, and there are always an expectation of the new age, of Advent, or even the return of the Messiah and things like this. So this was the historical context when the 3 manifestos appear in Germany. this is Paracelsus. He was one of the forerunners, what was after called the Rosicrucians as a whole. And he was one of the pioneers of the Western medicine. He was one of the pioneers of the toxicology. He talked about the venoms, the poison. He believed that every poison has the other side, which has in itself the cure for the diseases. He was a very special man. And there is a lot of parallels between Paracelsus and Blavatsky. It's not the subject of this talk tonight. Paracelsus has a philosophy called Theophrasia Sancta, where he tried to present as an alternative spiritual path in this whole historical context, which was very, very confusing at the time. He expects to give an alternative for this confusion in terms of philosophy and religion. This Theophrasia Sancta is divided into two lights: the light of grace and the light of nature. In theosophical terms, we could say that the light of Buddhi and the light of Manas. If you say in a religious popular way, you could say the light of the divine and the light of mind, of the science. Paracelsus, there's a scholar called Carlos Gili. He's probably one of the main authorities in Rosicrucians nowadays. He said that the Paracelsus was one of the forerunners not only of the medicine but of law. He was called the principle of all the principle of law. And so back in the day, the great thinkers they domain many areas of thinking. And Paracelsus is considered one of the forerunners of the Rosicrucian movement because he synthesized different areas in one coherent philosophy. Simon Student was another forerunner. He was a scholar from Württemberg. He published Neometria, the marriage of the holy place. He also had this messianic view of that age. He explored Joachim de Fior, 3 ages, where he's called the age of Father, the age of Son, and the age of the Holy Spirit. And on top of that, he added the Ezekiel vision and the expectation of the New Jerusalem. Okay. Here's a very interesting point. When the Rosicrucians appeared, there was some astrological and astronomical events that it's really worth it to mention. In 1602, a new star comet appeared in the constellation of Cygnus Swan. In 1603, Johannes Kepler observed a conjunction of Jupiter and Pisces, which reproduced the same astral chart of the time of the birth of Christ. Kepler consulted a Jewish rabbi and astronomer called Isaac Abravanel, who confirmed that the conjunction was auspicious for a birth of a great prophet, a miracle worker, or even a Messiah. A few months later, Mars joined the conjunction, and in 1604, Mars moved to Sagittarius, the fire trigon. In October 1604, the supernova blazed in the constellation of Serpent. And in 1604 is considered the date of the discovery of the tomb of the Father Christian Rosenkreuz. I don't usually read in my talks of lecture. There was only a few of them. I'm not a professional lecturer, but I'm gonna ask the skills to read some of the slides because English is not my primary language. And I'm afraid I'm very concerned with the responsibility to give the right information, and if in case of my pronunciation is not so good, you have the text over there, right? So the Forma Fraternitatis itself appear with with this headline, and it says, "The Manifesto of the Most Praiseworthy Order of the Rose Cross, addressed to all rulers, states, and learned of Europe." It was published in Kassel, 1614. The Forma Fraternitatis, what they want to create, they want to reform, a general reformation of the whole wide world. Okay, they want to put together religion, science, arts, philosophy in one coherent philosophy or way of life and way of thinking. They thought that Europe was in a very bad situation, and they want to bring some of the wisdom of the East to Europe. I'm gonna read a little bit, and I ask excuse again for this, because this legend talk about the legend of the hero of the Rosicrucians, which is Christian Rosicrucians, and I have to read it, and then I'm gonna jump to the main part of this lecture. Before anything, I would like to say that I'm gonna present 3 versions tonight. The first version is the version of the manifesto itself. The second version is about the scholars who really studied real hard to explain what happened at that time. I consider this the second version. And then I'm gonna give the Blavatsky version, which differs from the first 2, of course. The Forma Fraternitatis tells the story of the Father CR, later referred to in the text as CRC, and his ill-fated pilgrimage to Jerusalem, his subsequent tutelage by the secret sages of the East, the wise men of Damkar in Arabia, from whom he learned physics, mathematics, magic, and Kabbalah, his return to Egypt and Fez and Spain. After his arrival in Germany, Father CR and other brothers established a fraternity, the Fraternity of the Rose Cross. The brothers of the fraternity were sent in mission throughout the world, having as their first priority to use the knowledge to cure the sick free of charge, gratis, not wearing any special clothing, and meet once each year in the mysterious house of the Holy Spirit. The legend shows an agreement with the 6 articles that they drew up prior to their separation, bounding themselves one to another to keep, that none of them should profess any other thing than to cure the sick, and that gratis. None of the posterity should be constrained to wear one kind of habit, but to follow the custom of the country. Every year, upon the day C, they would meet together in the house of Sancti Spiritus, or write the cause of their absence. Every brother should seek a worthy person to succeed him after his death. The word CR should be their seal, mark, and character. The fraternity should remain secret 100 years. This is the second manifesto, the Confessio Fraternitatis. In this manifesto, they were concerned to explain the reasons why the secret fraternity became known and open to all. Actually, it was open only to the worthy. And they write 37 reasons why they decided to open the fraternity to the worthy. I'm not going to mention the 37 reasons. Only the last ones, they are for me important, because they say they put 37 rationales why they are doing this. But in the end, as you can see, for example, in 35, is a clear indication that they were trying to recruit people. They say, will join us. If you join us, the nature will reward you. But only those who are sincere and chosen by God will find us. This is important to mention because what happened after that was that this caused a lot of polemic and furor. Lots of people want to join them. Nobody found them. And the whole legend of the Rosicrucians started after that. And the third and last one is not considered a manifesto itself, but is a document that belongs to the triad of the manifestos. It's called The Chemical Wedding of Christian Rosicrucians. And I'm not going to try to pronounce in German, but Peter, would you like to pronounce the correct? Okay, thank you. So the Chemical Wedding of the Christian Rosicrucians. This gentleman over there was Carlos Gili, the man I mentioned before. He's considered the most authority in the modern studies of the Rosicrucianism. Even the other scholars has him as a reference, so I have a lot of respect to him. So the scholars like Carlos Gili and Roland Edghofer place in the writings the context of Johann Valentin André own life, writings, and perhaps motives. What you are trying to say here is the three manifesto was anonymous, but the modern scholars of this topic found out that the real author was Johann Valentin André. Okay, that's what they are trying to say. This Chemical Wedding, it's more like a novel or comedy. It's not about the Christian's wedding, but that of a fairy tale king and queen. He is chosen to assist the process, which includes the beheading of royal couple and their resurrection through chemical or rather alchemical operations, an interest that André shared with his father. This early work remained unpublished and no copy of it is known. Now I'm going to mention some scholars who also studied the topic. I'm not going to mention all of them. It's impossible to mention all of them tonight. But these are the main ones, the most famous ones nowadays. It doesn't mean that they are better than others, but I chose them tonight because they are more accessible. And the first two ones, the couple Mackintosh and Jocelyn Goodwin, they've made a very good, one of the best translations of the manifestos. Okay. We also have Tobias Churton. He's an English gentleman, and Robert Gilbert. He had been here in the Theosophical Society, and he belonged to Schreier, the Societas Rosicruciana in Anglia, of the United Grand Lodge of England. So here they are, Christopher Mackintosh and Jocelyn Goodwin. They resumed their book in their translation in this way. The story of Christian Rosicrucians in his secretive order, as told in the Fama Fraternitatis, had a political repercussion that continued to this day, while the Chemical Wedding is a landmark in European fantasy fiction. According to the Mackintosh and Goodwin's version, these was the three guys behind the manifestos. The bottom one is Johann Valentin André, who was a Protestant theologian. In the middle is Tobias Hess, a Paracelsian physician. And on top is Christopher Besold, a jurist, a man of law. Adam Hazelmer, also a Paracelsian physician, issued the first printed reply to the Brotherhood in 1612. He was arrested because of that by the Jesuit Inquisitor Guaranoni. Uh, Carl Wiedemann, Hazelmere friend, also an alchemist, passed the fama to Prince August von Anhalt. And then the publication of the manifesto started to grow widely and out of control. This is a very important point because beside of being the manifesto theoretically anonymous, they supposed to be passed one to, they consider the rightful candidate, and they passed the manifesto one by one. They didn't have the desire to publish to the whole wide world like this. The whole wide world Reformation will become with a few people, and then gonna grow up. But for some reason, after they start to pass this manuscript, it came out of control, and the publication become a very serious business. Nowadays, in 2018, if you type the word Rosicrucian, you're gonna find 280,000 pages. More than 20 organizations call themselves Rosicrucians. I don't think they wanted this in the beginning, but just something that it came out of the control, right? Here their conclusion, Mackintosh's and Godwin's conclusion, that there is no proof whether the Christian Rosenkreuz of his fraternity ever actually exists. The publication of these manuscripts by the Tübingen Circle caused furor, and a flood of publications start to appear everywhere in Germany. Some openly request to join the Rosicrucians, some were anti-Rosicrucian, some wrote about them. Michael Meyer, physician and alchemist, visited Robert Flood in England. He was also a physician and an alchemist, were great apologists of the Rosicrucian, but there is no proof that they were real Rosicrucians, or at least in that sense. He's the other scholar, Tobias Churton. He basically repeat almost the same version of the two other previous ones, and he said this phrase, which is very famous for those who study the subject nowadays, that the manifesto was the greatest publicist stunt of all times. And he finished, and he had that the excitement generated by the prospect of a secret underground body of initiates pledge to change the world by invisible means, privy to all knowledge, advanced science, and vast wealth. Robert Gilbert said, Rosicrucianism is a spiritual philosophy developed 400 years ago by a dedicated group of devout German Lutheran theologians who were enthusiasts, right, by the ideas of Paracelsus, a controversial Hermetic physician and alchemist who practiced and taught in the early 16th century. He had that after the manifesto that the Rosicrucians disappeared, but the public, or little part of it that concerned itself with the fraternity, is still desperately sought them, deny them, support them, pretend to be them, or condemn them, by way of a stream of books, pamphlets, and broadsides for the next 10 years and more. So now I'm going to go to the main part and most important of this lecture, which is the Blavatsky version of Rosicrucianism. You see, the Theosophical Society appear in the world in a very similar manner of the Rosicrucian. There's a lot of mysteries unsolved. And now I'm going to present the ideas of Blavatsky, which is the founder of this society, the founder of this lodge, which is the thesis and the point of view I defend, with no disrespect to any other scholar, because they study very hard and everything. We have to respect the hard work. But I have to admit that Blavatsky had access. This is my personal opinion. I know that she has access to privileged information, and she had access to secrets that no other or scholar or even the Rosicrucians of that time had before. Blavatsky interest in Rosicrucians since childhood. Her interest in this subject comes since childhood. Same thing happened with William Church and others. And I'm gonna request, I'm gonna excuse to read again, because I'm really concerned and I have a lot of responsibility to pass this information, right? This information are in the Extraordinary Life of Elena Blavatsky, which is electronic version is available in the Theosophical Society of Pasadena website. In the letter to a friend of her youth, Prince Alexander Dudukov-Korsakov, HPB speaks of a library that her grandmother had inherited from her father, Prince Paul, and contained hundreds of books on magic, on alchemy, magic, and other sciences. I had read with keenest interest before the age of 15, she writes. Soon, neither Paracelsus, Conrad, nor Cornelius Agrippa would have anything to teach me. It is only later, however, when she traveled in the East, that she found more light on the subjects. Blavatsky's interest in Rosicrucianism, the continuation, she said, I was in the search of the unknown, she said. If I began to speak to you of alchemy, of union, of marriage of the red virgin with the astral mineral, of the philosopher's stone, union of the soul and the spirit, would you send me to the devil? Yet, when I expound a subject, surely I must use the appropriate terms befitting the subject. It was in this letter that she revealed her studies on the books of her great-grandfather, library, on alchemy, magic, and other occult sciences. Paracelsus, Conrad, and Agrippa, she wrote, all spoke of the marriage of the Red Virgin with the Hierophant, and of the astral mineral with the Sibyl, of the combination of the feminine and masculine principles, or what the East call the harmonizing of the yin and yang. Judge also has some interest in alchemy and Rosicrucianism. In the same book, The Silver Crystal, Anita Atkins was an associate of the United Lodge of Theosophists. She said, his father, Frederick Judge, was a Mason and was interested in mysticism. William became mortally ill when he was 7, and it is reported in a sketch of Judge's life that the physician declared that small sufferer to be dying than dead. But in the outburst of grief which followed the announcement, it was discovered that the child had revived. During the convalescence, the boy showed aptitude and knowledge never before displayed, exciting wonderment and questioning among his elders as to when and how he had learned all these new things. He seemed the same and yet not the same. He had to be studied anew by his family, and while no one knew that he had ever learned to read, from his recovered in 8 years, in his 8th year, we find him devouring contents of all the books he could obtain, relating to mesmerism, phrenology, character reading, religion, magic, Rosicrucianism, and deeply absorbed in the book of Revelation and Bible, trying to discover its real meaning. Now, this is one of the things that caught my attention when I was revising this material, was that Mahatma Maurya ordered to form a secret society like the Rosicrucian Lodge. She said, the world is not prepared yet to understand the philosophy of the occult science. Let them assure themselves, first of all, that they are beings in an invisible world, whether spirits of the dead or elementals. and that there are hidden powers in man which are capable of making a god of him on earth. When I am dead and gone, people will perhaps appreciate my disinterested motives. I have pledged my word to help people on truth while living, and I will keep my word. Let them abuse and revile me. Let some call me a medium and a spiritualist, another impostor. The day will come when the posterity will learn to know me better. Oh, poor, foolish, credulous, wicked world. Moria brings others to form a society, a secret society like the Rosicrucian Lodge. He promised to help. In the letter 12 from Serapis to H.S. Olcott, published in the Letter of Master of Wisdom, 2nd series, compiled by C. Ginarajadaza, it's written, to our brother Henry. They are talking about some problems, and at the end, the Master said, he may be prompted, never ordered. A Rosicrucian becomes and is not made. This is a very occult law. This simply means, in my interpretation, I might be wrong. I don't consider I have the perfect, even the right interpretation. But I'm gonna share with you what I think about this. If you want to be a Rosicrucian, you have to be a Rosicrucian beforehand, and then you might be made a Rosicrucian. If you want to be a disciple of the masters, you have to be a disciple first, and then you may be received officially. That's the law. Nothing is given to you. You have to become. That's my interpretation. In the letter 3 from Serapis to H.S. Olcott, it says, Brother Neophyte, we greet thee. He who seeks us, find us. Try. So I just showed the connection of the mass with the masses, the Theosophical Society, the founders of the Theosophical Society, and the Rosicrucian philosophy. William George wrote an article about Cagliostro. Blavatsky wrote a great deal on Cagliostro. She is respecting a lot. And she say, writing about Cagliostro, that Cagliostro taught the Eastern doctrine of the principles. This is in the Collected Writings, volume 12, page 81. And that he served the masses of the fraternity he would not name. Usually the fraternity, they are secret. You don't know even the name. Okay? It's a standard pattern since the beginning of the history of the mankind. The mysteries, they're never going to find the real name of anything. You're not going to find if you're not ready. Now, I want you to read this part, which is very important, because a group of people, they are trying to create a magical order here in London. I believe it was in 1860. And Master K.H., he tried to help these people. But they were very uncommon people. They were the best people in the occultism, ceremonial magic at the time. They are nothing more, nothing less than Eliphas Levi, Regazzoni, which was a mesmerist, Antonio Regazzoni, and the copter Zeg van Bey. The master say in the letter 28, in a letter addressed to Eeyore Hume, written towards the final break-off. There was some problem in the Theosophical Society at the time, and he mentioned that the possibility or not to create this club, this order, this magical circle. Okay? He said, the greatest and the most promising of such school in Europe, the last attempt in this direction failed most signally some 20 years ago in London. It was the secret school for practical teaching of magic, founded under the name of a club by a dozen of enthusiasts under the leadership of Lord Linton's father. He had collected together for the purpose the most ardent and enterprising, and as well as some of the most advanced scholars in mesmerism and ceremonial magic, such as Eliphas Levi, Regazzoni, and the Copt Zerg van Bey. And yet, in the pestilent London atmosphere, the club came to an ultimate end. I visited about a half a dozen times and perceived from the first that there was and could be nothing in it. And this is also the reason why the British Theosophical Society does not progress one step practically. William Judge wrote this in the Echoes of the Orient, also again about the Rosicrucians. If you see how many times since the beginning the Rosicrucian was always connected with the Theosophical Society. He said, today is not uncommon to find those who have the temerity, audacity, enough to dub themselves Rosicrucians. The Blavatsky had the Cagliostro Masonic Jew, a Rosicrucian Jew from the 18th degree of the Scottish Rite. HPB wrote in her diary of 1878 on 2nd of December, 2 of December, found the Rosicross jewel missing from the bureau drawer. Know who took it. It will come back. And did come back. The Adept Seraps referred to it in a brief note to Alcott. The lost one is restored in its proper place. The Gabbers, mischievous elementals, made it invisible out of malice. From the ULT, United Lodge of Theosophies magazine, San Francisco, 26th of December 1914, we find this small article, this paragraph, which reflects exactly the way of thinking of HPB. It says, as for Rosicrucians, whatever calls itself by that name is self-convicted and imposture. Rosicrucians are forbidden to disclose their connection with the order or to pose as teachers, or being in possession of any peculiar knowledge whatsoever. The only visible mission in the world was to do good by stealth and blush to find it known. Whoever calls himself a Rosicrucian has thereby proved that he is not one. Certainly, it would be correct to say that there is more practical occultism in a single chapter of Ocean of Theosophy, for example, than in all the books of Rosicrucianism and alchemy and Kabbalah that are now obtainable. If the Rosicrucian student of the Middle Ages had received under his initiation of 100th part of the information contained in the secret doctrine, he would have considered himself as blessed among men. And there are casual footnotes in the secret doctrine contain occult information that Paracelsus, for example, would never have dared even to hint at. In 1885, Blavatsky wrote a reply, an article published in the magazine called Spiritual Sciences in Boston, July 15 and 22nd. The name was A Few Questions to Iraf. So A Few Questions to Iraf was an article in response to another one named Rosicrucianism. The name Iraf means a composite of the initial of 5 people. Hiraf stands for Friedrich Heinrich, William Irving, I for William Irvings, R for Robinson, A for Adams, and F for Fales. Hiraf colleagues, in this article, Hiraf asked if there was the possibility of to find college for neophytes. And Blavatsky says in response, in the first place, Hiraf doubts where there are in existence in England or elsewhere what we term regular colleges for neophyte of this secret science. I will say for personal knowledge that such there are in the East, India, Asia Minor, and other countries. Another important, very, very important information in this article, Hiraf, is that the Cagliostro was the last Rosicrucian. She said, strictly speaking, the Rosicrucians do not now even exist. The last of the fraternity have departed in the person of Cagliostro. Another very important thing is she gave another version for the origin of the order. She said, so the Egyptian Ophites became the Christian Gnostics, shooting forth the Basilidians of the 2nd century. And the original Rosicrucians created the Paracelsists, or the fire philosophers, the European alchemists, and other physical branches of their sect. This, for those who are seeking the Rosicrucian, is like discovering, is the discovery of the millennium. Because it's clear she's revealing something that was sub rosa, or in secret. Still, about the origin of the order, she says, the origin of the brotherhood can be ascertained by the earnest, genuine student of occultism, who happens to travel in Asia Minor, if he chooses to fall in with some of the brotherhood, and if he is willing to devote himself to the head-time work of deciphering a Rosicrucian manuscript, the hardest thing in the world, for it is carefully preserved in the archives of the very lodge which was founded by the first Kabbalist of that name, but which now goes by another name. Then she gives the version about the legend of Christian Rosenkreuz. She said, the founder of it, a German Reuter knight by the name of Rosicrucians, was a man who, after acquiring a very suspicious reputation through the practice of black art in his native place, reformed in consequence of a vision. Giving up his evil practices, he made a solemn vow and went on foot to Palestine in order to make his amend honorable at the Holy Sepulchre. Once there, the Christian God, the meek but well-informed Nazarene, trained as he was in the high school of the Essenes, those vicious descendants of the botanical as well as the astrological and magical Chaldeans appeared to Rosencrantz. A Christian would say in a vision, but I would suggest in the shape of a materialized spirit. The purport of this visitation, as well as the subject of their conversation, remained forever mystery to many of the brethren. But immediately after that, the sorcerer and ex-Reuter disappeared and was heard of no more, till the mysterious sect of the Rosicrucians was added to the family of the Kabbalists, and their power rose popular attention even among the eastern populations, indolent and accustomed as they are to live among wonders. She said that Thomas Vaughan was a Rosicrucian. She said that he was made before he became. Before he became a true Rosicrucian, he was made, and something made him a true Rosicrucian. She said, I know, and I can prove that Vaughan was most positively made before he came. Thomas Vaughan was a Welsh philosopher and alchemist who wrote in English. He is now remembered for his work in the field of natural magic. And finishing and wrapping up this talk, I would like to talk about the Count of Saint-Germain, which is also mentioned in this article. She said, the Count of Saint-Germain is, until this very time, a living mystery. In the literature, as well as in oral tradition, sometimes is the more trustworthy about these wonderful counts having been met and recognized in different centuries is no myth. Anyone who admits one of the practical truths of the occult science taught by the Kabbalah or the Kabbalah tacitly admits them all. It must be harmless to be or not to be. And if the Kabbalah is true, then Saint-Germain need be no myth. And here's the 7 rule of the Rosicrucians. As I mentioned before, and as it's published in the Fama Fraternità, there were only 6 rules. Now Blavatsky shows the 7th rule. That means she knew it something. Not everything was published. And she said, if Hiraf is right about the 7th rule of the Brotherhood of the Rosy Cross, which says that the Rosy Cross becomes and it's not made, he may err as to the exception which have ever existed among all the brotherhoods devoted to the pursuit of the same knowledge. So that's everything I intend to say today. I'm sorry, I know it was heavy subject, was a lot of slides. I usually don't, it's the first time I use PowerPoint in my life. I've been giving this kind of lecture in Freemasonry and even the Theosophical Society without any resource of this type, but I don't dislike. I think it was a good idea. I just need to get more used to it. Okay, I thank you so much. I'm very honored to be here. I'm very surprised with the number of people. I thought would be like half of this. And I thank you so much for every and each one for coming here tonight.